Alright, today's question is a pretty tricky one. It comes from Blops. Blops to PS3. When you actually click through to their channel, they have no name listed, so we'll just go with that. The question is, do you get avolition? Tips to deal with it if you do. Also get this feeling of a hole in my head and things are just muted and unimpactful. Can't even enjoy games or decide what to do when it's bad. And this was on a short I did, which is called Sorry, in brackets, Schizoid Withdrawal. So I'm going to assume that this person is asking mainly from a schizoid perspective, but I'd like to point out that avolition, and especially like this bad lack of motivation at this level, can also be a depression thing. Schizoid and depression can go together. I think it's fairly common because, depends on what kind of schizoid you have, but I think a lot of us get depressed because life is pointless and it's hard to enjoy anything, so of course, where's your brain gonna go? The first thing I would say, this is so hard to answer because it really depends on what's going on with you and we're all different. But the first thing I would say is get yourself checked out for depression. I don't know if this person, they didn't give any information about themselves, so, and I don't know, did I try to stalk them? Probably not very much. I don't think, they've got a few things on their channel, but it's just like playlists, that's it. So, yeah. I don't know this person, but if you haven't been checked for depression, that's the first thing. Even if you can't go in and get a diagnosis, at least look up the criteria, see if that's you. Now, something that's important to know is there's more than one type of depression. they might all fit under major depressive disorder, although you've also got things like dysthymia. I do have a video I made a long time ago called Melancholic Depression and Dysthymia. I had what's called double depression. Do I still count as having that? It's hard to say because I'm not super deep into the depression. It's more like low-level depression most of the time, and then I'll suddenly fall off a cliff, but maybe not for 2 weeks. It's supposed to be 2 weeks to really count as major depression, I think. I am not a mental health expert. I'm just someone who's lived through a lot of crap, and I don't know how I'm still here, but I am. So, why is it important to get checked for depression? Well, I think the key thing is if you have melancholic depression or biological depression, you may benefit from antidepressants. Now, for me personally, I have tried that. I think they did help. The problem for me is I just react really strongly to any chemicals that go into my body that affect the brain. Don't know why. I did a genetic test and it showed no results, no clues about anything in there, any interactions there. I think it's just I'm half Japanese. Japanese liver processing is kind of known for a few issues there. I don't know. I don't know for sure. I think, Japanese might process things differently to Westerners, and I guess a lot of drugs are tested for Westerners. Whatever the reason, not all Japanese people are like that, but I know my mum is a little bit sensitive to alcohol, although I'm not sure if it's the alcohol itself or if it's Western preservatives. She does better with Asian alcohol rather than Western alcohol, so there must be something else going on there. She doesn't really drink that much though as well. I've never had enough alcohol to figure out if that's an issue for me, but struggling to process alcohol can indicate an issue with the liver. Anyway, point being, I can't take medication. I did also make another video a long time ago about whether meds are worth it, which might be worth checking out. But I think, so it can be quite a process to figure out if meds are good for you, whether they work, whether it's worth the balance of side effects versus benefits. But if they work for you, they can be life-changing, they can be life-saving, because, if you cannot enjoy anything, that serious anhedonia, and it's really screwing up your life, it may be that you need some adjustment to your brain chemicals through antidepressants. There are a lot of different kinds of antidepressants, so keep that in mind, and they don't have a blood test yet to work out which one is going to be the best for you. I did participate in a study a while back, but this is before I had the schizoid diagnosis, and they've never asked me for an update on my mental health to help update their records, but they were looking for genetic markers, I think, of depression and other issues, which I think was hoping to lead to a blood test about which medications work best for you. but I don't know that much progress has been made there. So, unfortunately, it's a trial and error thing. You would usually start off with SSRIs, which are relatively mild in terms of side effects, but sometimes aren't strong enough. They help a lot of people, but, you know, you would try that. Now, be warned, they do not tell you, but if you've been on them for a while and then you try and come off, you can get brain zaps, which is uncomfortable. Thank you to Nervous Neuron for helping me when I was going through that, because I had no idea what was going on. No one warned me that that was a thing. So coming off antidepressants, they're not addictive, but you can get annoying things that you just have to push through. I have heard that some people who've been on meds for a long time can't get rid of the brain zaps, which is a bit scary, but you would usually know within like maybe 2 months or so whether or not the antidepressants are helping, or just, and whether or not you're going to get over the side effects. So being on them for 2 months, that's not too bad. You shouldn't really get bad brain zaps from that unless you're very unlucky. After that, depends a bit on who you're seeing. They might try some more SSRIs, maybe SNRIs, maybe tricyclics. I think I also tried a tetracyclic. You know, there's a whole bunch of things. It depends a bit on what else is going on for you. Anyway, that's like a whole journey. But it can really help people. Now, I don't think it's as life-changing, for example, as if you're someone with ADHD and you go on the right medication. I've heard that those people who find the right medication for ADHD suddenly, like, everything is just makes so much more sense. It's not like that with antidepressants, at least not in my experience. It's like a sort of a slow thing where suddenly I'm able to, like, actually not suddenly, over time I realize I'm able to do more, and I like, it's so slow that at the time I wasn't sure it was actually the antidepressants, but then in hindsight, when I came off them, I did okay for a bit, but then life pressures built up and I collapsed in a heap. So I think in hindsight, actually, the antidepressants really were helping me. I was losing way too much weight and just withering away, and ended up not able to eat food. I could only have like liquid diet smoothies and Sustagen hospital formula. It was not a good time. And you know, even like I'm a better size now. I'm like healthy weight according to BMI, which I know is outdated, but you know, gives you a guide. I haven't weighed myself in a while, but I'm pretty sure I'm staying in the bottom end of healthy. And even with that, I do get lightheadedness or dizziness if I stand up too fast. That's still a thing for me. Might be an iron thing, although my blood tests never show any issues, but being too small is not good. Anyway, that aside, I do think antidepressants helped, and they sort of just give your brain, like, they don't solve everything, because I was still able to get depressed on them, and that's why I had to increase the dose, and then my appetite got even worse. But they can take the edge off this absolute, like, the despair and not wanting to do anything. It just gives your brain a little bit of a boost. So that's 8 minutes on just that point. Get yourself checked for depression. Consider medication, because even if your problem is caused by schizoid, and even if it's childhood trauma schizoid, or just trauma in general schizoid, whatever the cause, like, if it's not a biological cause, for, you know, as opposed to schizoid that might actually be pre-schizophrenia, even if your schizoid is not caused by biological reasons, once you've been schizoid for enough, it can kind of mess your brain up, I think, and so then it does become a biological issue, or a chemical issue, biochemical issue, and at that point maybe the antidepressants help. So that's why I say consider that. Okay, if you've already been there, this is where things get tricky. It's really hard, because I know a lot of schizoids don't want to go to therapy, and often the therapy isn't worth it for us, because schizoid depression does seem to be different to standard depression. I've had that experience. I've heard other schizoids talk about it. There was a video by a schizoid girl on YouTube. I don't know if it still exists. I can try and link it somewhere if I can find it again, but she was saying that she went to group therapy and figured out very quickly that her problems were not the same as everyone else's problems, and it turned out she had schizoid rather than standard depression. So, you know, normal people, when they're depressed, quite often they're down on themselves and they think they're the ones that suck, and a lot of self-esteem issues, and just they think that people would be better off without them, that they're such a burden, and all that kind of stuff. A lot of social stuff going on where they feel like they're not good enough socially. Whereas with schizoid depression, I mean, not enough schizoids talk about it for me to know for sure, but in my experience, for me, I'm down on the world. It's the world that sucks. I don't mind myself. I don't care whether people like me or not. Oddly enough, people do seem to like me, and I don't even do very much, and that's something that like puzzles me a lot. I've heard that like if you don't care about other people's approval, it can make you more attractive to other people because, I don't know, they see you as confident or whatever, or maybe mysterious, and they're like, oh, why doesn't she care what I think? I don't know, people are kind of strange like that. For some reason, people like me. Maybe is my face symmetrical enough? Because sometimes like physical appearance in terms of like facial symmetry is a thing. I don't know. I'm pretty sure I've got like doing the makeup thing, I started to realize actually it's not that symmetrical after all, because I can do things on one side and I have to change how I do it on the other side, especially with the eyes. But anyway, that's a tangent, that whole makeup episode. No. So, yeah, like my depression problems, it's like, what's the point of life? The whole existential thing, especially like being brought up Catholic, being told God has a plan, you have a purpose, and then realizing that's all bullshit, and it's like, well, why am I here? Why am I struggling in this life, in this stupid world we live in, if there's no point to it? So a lot of existential stuff, a lot of like, the world is crap. And, I sort of blame the sort of Disney childhood vibe for that as well. Like, not just like, ooh, everything is great, you will go to heaven, and Jesus, blah, 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 is gonna fix everything. Also the happily ever afters. Like, you just need to get through things, and then everything will be great, and then you reach your happily ever after, and that's it. You don't ever have to do anything. And it's like, every time I've made an achievement, it's like, now what? It's not a happily ever after, it's a now what. Even like spending so much time working on my EPs for my music, especially that first one, Rainbow Death Ray. The Rainbow Death Ray EP was so much work because I took too much on myself, and it was built up as this whole thing, and we had the launch gig and all that, and quite a lot of people were into it. But then afterwards, I'm like, now what? I've just spent months of my life working on this and don't really feel much in particular. Anyway, that's the happily ever after bullshit, whatever. That just makes, like... Also, fiction has been difficult for me because schizoids do like to go into a fantasy world a bit, but then the problem for me is I still live in the real world ultimately, and so all that fantasy stuff just makes the real world look so boring and dull, and like, why are we here? Why, like, I can't just stay in fantasy all the time, and to me it's not enough motivation to get through real world stuff just to have some time to wallow in fantasy. Like I used to be right into the Animorphs. You can't see them behind the other stuff, but I've got the whole set of Animorphs there, and just like, other books. Anyway, so like depression, not so much to do with people. It's more to do with just the shit world that we live in and the things that we're supposed to do. Like, you're supposed to go to work, which is usually a job that's crap, just to make money, just to survive and keep living. And I'm like, but I don't care about this world. Why should I? Point being, depression for schizoids seems to me to be different to standard people's depression. Other schizoids may disagree with me. I don't have a good sample size because there's not enough research done on us, because I'm like one of the few YouTubers who has schizoid or is open about having schizoid, and most schizoids are quite quiet. Even if they watch my videos, they hardly say anything. So, if you're gonna do therapy, a lot of rambling just to say, if you're gonna do therapy, your therapist, whether you're seeing a psychologist, psychiatrist, counselor, whoever, they need to know you have schizoid personality disorder. Now, that can make it hard to find a therapist who will take you in the first place, which is a problem I had when I first got my diagnosis. I actually did go around asking a few people, and the ones that did get back to me were saying, we don't have the expertise for this, like we can't take you on as a patient. I also talked to universities. They were not interested at all because no one cares about schizoid. Everything is about autism or schizophrenia. There's nothing for like schizoid, which is sort of in this odd space in between, I guess, in their minds. Personality disorders. Society is so awkward about personality disorders. They're too scared to offend us by saying our personalities are the problem, just because the word personality is in there. It's like, yeah, I've got all these quirks that are difficult, but there's more to my personality than just the personality disorder, so like, get over it. I'm happy to admit that I'm a nutcase and I cannot function in this stupid world we live in, which to me makes me think, yes, I'm a nutcase, but I still feel like the way I think about the world is quite logical. It just doesn't fit with the world we live in. Like, you have to... I think I'm sane. I think it's the people who function in a world this shit who are crazy, but whatever. According to the majority, I'm the nutcase, so fine. I don't care. That doesn't offend me. But yeah, no, you're... So, first of all, they need to know you have schizoid. They may reject you, so you just need to find someone else who is willing to work with a schizoid. Even if they're not, they don't need to be an expert. Pretty much no one is an expert in schizoid. There are a couple that maybe might claim it on the internet, but I don't know. It's probably better not to see a specialist, because if they have a special interest in your condition, they may misdiagnose you, they may make assumptions. It's better to have someone who's a bit more of an open slate, a clean slate, but like kind of open to the idea that you have schizoid, who has read the criteria for schizoid and realizes that telling you to make friends isn't going to help you because you do not give a shit about making friends. That is not your problem. You are not lonely. Which is a lot of the depression stuff, like CBT. You know, I am not sitting around worrying what people are thinking of me, worrying that someone ignored me or whatever. I don't need that. I mean, CBT might help some schizoids, but I got to a point where it's just like, that's not my problem. Now, if they know that you have schizoid personality disorder, it, one, means they're less likely to waste their time with the standard depression stuff, assuming you have social problems when actually you're quite happy being on your own. And then two, they can sort of dig into things related to schizoid. Like in my case, I sort of had to figure out I've got childhood trauma. Now, I am not someone who is fully healed in any way. I still can't function in society. But sort of processing more, like realizing that I had childhood trauma and processing, that kind of helped me at least understand where my problems are and maybe be a bit more forgiving of myself, because I've put so much pressure on myself to try and function in this world. And now I'm like, actually, I'm pretty far gone. I don't need to try. Like, I'm lucky I have support. You know, my family, yes, they're probably the ones who gave me most of my problems, but they take care of my physical needs. And okay, instead of pressuring myself to try and make heaps of money and whatever support myself, no, I'm just going to accept that help from them, even if it's not enough to heal me. Yeah, and then, you know, also accepting it. For me, you know, I don't know what other schizoids are like, but for me, I was very stubborn about trying to find ways to be self-sufficient. A lot of schizoids want to be self-sufficient, and realizing I had the childhood trauma and all that really helped me just accept that I need the help, that I need the support, that it's okay for me not to keep trying that hard, and just my main goal is just to stay alive. And then everything else is bonus. Everything else is either passing the time or it's like a bonus achievement. Okay. So yeah, then you can try therapy. And really the therapy should be mainly focused at fixing the depression side, because, you know, I don't think you're going to make much progress on the schizoid stuff, depending on how good your therapist is. But personality disorders are deeply entrenched, whereas the depression component is probably the part that's easier to change. So if you can understand yourself from a schizoid perspective and then get a different perspective on your depression and what you can maybe do about it, with the guidance of a therapist, you might be able to give you some ideas that are relevant to schizoids, because, I don't know, maybe that's the way you can do it. Okay, if you have tried therapy, or you can't access a therapist, or your therapist sucks, or even if your therapist is good but you're not making any progress, which, you know, I'm still trying to figure this out, but yeah. In terms of motivation, like, yes, I have had different varying levels of avolition, you know, complete lack of motivation in my life. I better just check that avolition actually means that. Avolition! That would have been good to do before. Yeah, the inability to initiate or engage in goal-directed behaviors, a motivational impairment, can be a symptom of schizophrenia and depression. Yeah, and if it can be, you know, it sounds like a negative negative symptom of schizophrenia. So that's things that are taken away from you. But yeah, basically, motivation really sucks. Okay. If you've tried medication and therapy or looked into it, decided it's not for you, it's really difficult. What I've taken to doing, I mean, there's a lot of self-care, that sort of acceptance of the position that I'm in, the help that I need, which is hard as a schizoid. I think our disorder has a lot to do with, you know, thinking we can do stuff for ourselves, refusing help because for whatever reason our brains won't trust people. Or, I mean, I know if you want something done right, do it yourself. That's the saying. To me, if you want something done at all, do it yourself, because people are just, oh my god. But then also, I'm in music and art, and creative people are not exactly the most reliable people. They're well-meaning, but they're not reliable. Whereas, you know, your more financy types, they can be reliable, but they can also be unempathetic, and yeah, it sort of depends. Anyway, no, like, apart from the self-care stuff, what I try and do these days is just find ways to hack my psychology. So you need to figure yourself out, and what are the ways that you can trick yourself into actually doing things. So my current biggest thing to trick myself into doing things plays on my sense of duty. I have glass child trauma, so that has to do with having a disabled brother and all the pressure on me to sort of be perfect, me to have no problems, me to help look after him, look after myself because my parents are too busy with him. I was also a high achiever, so everyone expected me to do really well, and I just ended up with this sense of duty. So I'm exploiting the sense of duty. And also being female, I don't know if Blops is male or female. Being female, I think I have like a very unconscious maternal instinct. And so what's helping me at the moment is having my dog, who is currently zonked in the bathroom behind there. We went to the dog park again, so hopefully he'll be pretty chill. But yeah, exploiting that, the duty and the maternal instinct. Having a dog, so I do still, like, you know, I've had him for, almost 3 months. I've had Triton for almost 3 months. He's almost 5 months now. I still don't have as strong a connection as I did with Hope. Even like, you know, the moment pretty much that I met Hope, we had a connection, like and it was pretty strong, pretty fast. Whereas with Triton, it's not the same. He's a great dog, but it's just not the same. I think part of that is because I've become increasingly numb over time. I do think my mental illness is getting worse as I get older, which means I have to try even harder to find ways to trick myself into action. But I already have the sense of duty and the maternal instinct, and I think I've got a bit of trauma from Hope because he had so many medical issues, so now I'm just like, I have this hypervigilance to the medical issues that dogs can have. And so taking those elements, getting a new dog, that's helped me just do things for him. And I think this might also be because I experienced dissociation, so this might not work for everyone, but my brain sort of goes into dog mum mode, and then I at times have just felt like I'm watching myself look after him. And okay, maybe I'm not connected to the experience all the time, but at least I'm doing something and physically getting out there, and it's actually, I think it's been really good for me. I get so tired though, and sometimes I get frustrated, especially when he's cranky and hasn't had enough of a sleep, because he's a baby, that happens. But I'm actually doing a lot just for this dog. Before I got him, like when I was mourning Hope, and I'm still kind of mourning, I still have these horrible periods of grief, but in those first few months without any dog in my life, and before I had signed up to, you know, and watching his litter progress, I was just like, I was really not doing well. I tried for a bit, but then I was starting to go deeper and deeper into depression, and I think if I hadn't signed up to get the dog, I might not be here. Like, it was getting that bad. I was like having some pretty morbid thoughts, and yeah. Another thing about my psychology, I really dislike pain. I have a strong pain aversion. So, you know, even though I don't want to be here, there's no method of escaping existence that I can think of that I have access to that doesn't have a high risk of things going wrong resulting in greater pain. Like if I tried something and it didn't go well, and I was left with some horrible injury and chronic pain because of it, then my life would be worse than it is now. At least I have my physical health. I'm not super fit or anything, but I'm, you know, comfortable. I don't have any horrible injuries or whatever, so that's something that helps keep me alive anyway. But yeah, you know, not wanting to have pain, that gives me some motivation as well to at least do a bit of exercise. You know, I have my night stretches, because if I sit at the computer too long, my hips, I get hip pain. I don't know if this is a female thing or if it's like the way I'm sitting or what. And I worked out that a very specific Taekwondo kick stretch that I learned, you know, back when I was doing that, I'm technically a black belt, there's a particular stretch that really helps my hips, and so then I don't have that pain. So avoiding pain is another thing that helps me get motivated. It's sort of like, I feel like I have to, when I say motivated, it's like not like I really want to do the thing. It's more like, shit, I have to do this thing, otherwise it's going to be worse. So hacking my psychology like that. For me as well, sometimes music helps. There's a sort of cathartic element. I am a musician. I always used to sing when I was younger. I think, you know, if there was no trauma in my life, and if I just developed in a healthy way, I think there's a good chance I could have been some kind of a performer. Like, I think I have a natural performing instinct, and that might be the one reason that I'm one of the few schizoids who can do YouTube, because there is some deep instinct in me to perform in a way. I don't know, because I remember as a kid having a fascination with, like, you know, actors and characters on screen. There might have been some escapism there, because I was looking at the characters wanting to be the characters, not the actors, but then thinking, how do I become the character? I've got to be an actor. Except I had a lot of social anxiety when I was younger as well, which didn't help that. And yeah, eventually realizing I just didn't have the life experience or the emotional experience. I don't experience enough emotions to be an actor. Actors have to have all that so they can just draw it up and be convincing. Took me a long time to figure that one out. I'm too dead inside. But also actors get told what to do, and I don't like being told what to do. Anyway, a bit of a tangent there. This whole video is a tangent. All my videos are just really long tangents. But yeah, no, music. So if I put on specific tracks, there are specific tracks of music that once my brain hears it, it's really hard for me not to sing along. And then once I'm singing, that can build the energy. So if I'm really having a really bad day, I can think of at least one track that usually picks my energy up by the end of it. Now, depending on how badly I'm doing, sometimes I just need to go to bed, lie down, and hope that my brain resets itself. And that actually does kind of help sometimes. Yeah, I don't know, like, if you have Avolition, it really depends on you, and like how much self-awareness do you have? You kind of need to observe yourself. Now, if you're schizoid, chances are you do enough introspection. But the problem with being schizoid is you might be in denial of certain things. I think the next question I had to answer might have something to do. Oh no. There was another one. I don't know. I didn't save it. Shit. There's another question I need to get to at some point that involves, like, trying to admit to myself things that I think the schizoid thinking pattern wants to be in denial of. So it can be tricky. Like, you've got to really figure out and really be honest with yourself, which is very hard when you have mental illness, especially when the point of the mental illness is to hide weaknesses. I'm pretty sure that's what schizoid is, hiding weaknesses, not admitting to weaknesses. Could be wrong, but yeah, you've really got to figure yourself out and figure out how to hack yourself. When you do stuff, what is it that makes you do things? And how can you twist that in some way to make yourself do something? Like, clearly you had enough motivation to watch my video and write this comment. Is there some way that you can use that to achieve something else? I don't know, maybe. Did you have enough motivation to get to the end of this video? Is this the end of the video? Is there anything else I can think of? I don't know. Because, like, most of the answers would be like the standard mental health stuff would be go do some exercise. But at a certain point, I did have one good psychiatrist who recognized that when you're really deep in it, it's like almost impossible to get out and do some exercise. For me, after Hope, I struggled. I tried to keep going for walks. I tried to keep going out and about, but there was like a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I was not getting out enough. I was definitely not fit at all. Whereas now I have the little one. I'm going to try not to say his name because I don't want to disturb him. But, because of him, I now leave the house every day. Except like there was one day where it was raining really, really badly. But otherwise, I've been leaving the house every day. I've even been driving, but like just leaving the house and going for walks. Like I couldn't do it if I didn't have him as a sort of pressure on me to do it. Like, with the sense of duty, probably with the maternal instincts that I don't have any conscious experience of. And also just him, he has a lot of energy. And if the energy is pent up, he's just going to be more of a terror. It's a bit hard to balance because if he gets overtired, he's also a terror. So it's sort of like I need to get him enough exercise, which means I have to go and exercise with him. I have to do things with him so that I can have this moment of peace where I can make a 30-minute video. That's the current thing that's working for me. Hopefully it stays, but my brain does jump from thing to thing. Like before I mentioned, for a while I was motivated enough to do makeup for like maybe 2 months, and then it dropped off again. And then at other times in my life, like going through phases of being able to do a lot of bonsai and then that dropping off. And you need to be adaptable because sometimes what's working for you now isn't going to work for you tomorrow. So you've got to I don't know, it's tiring, but you kind of have to constantly reassess where you're at and figure out, what do you need? I can't tell you what you need to get through this. Only you can figure that out, but I hope that something I've said helps. Now, decide what to do when it's bad. I get it, because sometimes, even though I say all this stuff, sometimes my brain just needs the downtime and just needs to do nothing, or just watch YouTube, and then I'm still working my way through this badly designed Sudoku book. Getting there though, and I'm starting to work out some more of the patterns in the way that they've designed them. Sometimes I just need to do that, and I actually get kind of tired, like my brain just starts shutting down, and maybe I then need to go and have a nap. And so I have days where I'm just not productive at all. So I'm not saying that I have solved this. I'm just saying that I've found a few things that help me get motivated. Another one with music is like having a band, because I have that sense of duty. If my band needs me to do things, I'm much more likely to actually get onto it. Whereas at the moment, they don't need me. They're doing their own things. So I've kind of forgotten about it, but I'm like sort of on standby. And if they're like, hey, we need lyrics to this thing that we've written, I'll be like, okay, I better get that done. I don't want to leave people waiting too long. There's that sense of duty. I mean, it's hard because trying to find a band was such a pain. And then, when not much is happening, it's sort of like, what am I even doing here? But no, I think like the current group, I think they understand that I'm a bit of a mess, so there's not too many demands at the moment. And I don't mind that nothing's happening because I kind of need the chill time and just the dog mum time. I think music used to motivate me a lot more though, whereas these days, I'm not gigging. I think if I was gigging, that's another thing. I'm someone who works well with deadlines, so if I had a gig to prepare for, then I would be practicing a lot. Whereas at the moment, I hardly practice vocals. It's bad because I need to make sure I maintain all that practice to be able to make the noises that I do. And even sometimes if I haven't been talking for a while, I have gone through periods where I've just been very quiet. Then when I try and talk again, it's hard. So one good thing about YouTube is I get practice talking, which I think for a lot of schizoids might be a problem. I don't know how, if you're not going to do YouTube, how are you going to get practice talking? I don't know. I find YouTube works well for me, but it's not for everyone. Music. where was I going with that? Oh yeah, having gigs, having deadlines. You know, if I have a specific deadline to work to, then my brain is like, it has to be a convincing deadline though. You know, like I can't just say, okay, I need to have this done by this time. If there are no consequences, I'm not going to do it. So consequence of me not getting ready for a gig is then I get up on stage and I suck. So of course I'm going to practice and not suck. Academically, I did pretty well, which I think is supposed to be unusual for schizoids. But, you know, again, I think that's probably because I have glass child trauma where I have to be, like, perfect. So, putting a lot of pressure on myself, and also, like, I did do really well, especially in things like mathematics. So, you know, if I don't get the assignment done, if I don't study, I mean, I wasn't really good at studying because for most of high school I didn't need to study, so that was actually hard. It's only like in the last year of high school that things were hard enough that I needed to study. But yeah, you know, if you don't prepare, you're going to fail the assignment. If you don't get your assignment in on the due date, you're going to get penalized. And sure, it's kind of a meaningless thing. It's like for uni courses that I ended up doing nothing with, really. But it's just like, for me, saying like this is a concrete external deadline, then my brain is like, I'll work to that. Now, I probably did pull back on some of the perfectionism, and I did start ignoring some of my lecturers because some of them are idiots. How can you be a PhD and not know the difference between a bibliography and a reference list? And also, if you don't want to mark 5,000 words of writing, don't make that the limit. Make it 3,000. We had this one PhD guy who, the assignment said 5,000 word limit, and he's like, oh, try and write like 3,000. And I'm like, the criteria is 5,000. If I have that much to say, I'm fucking going to say it. You cannot penalize me for writing more than that. And also it said, hey, you have to have a bibliography. And he said, now don't go putting anything in there that you haven't actually referenced. And I said, so what you want is a reference list. And he's just, you fucking idiot. How did you even get your PhD, academic wanker? Anyway, I think I've rambled long enough. I think you've got the point. Is you need to figure yourself out. You need to figure out how to hack yourself. Treat yourself as a science project. Like, notice what you're doing, what makes you do things, and then try and find, like, sort of like it's a game. Like, how do you manipulate yourself to do things? But yeah, when this is really bad, just be kind to yourself, because you can't always do it. Like, depending on how severely affected you are, sometimes it's just, you just need to be kind to yourself, let yourself rest, let yourself just reset your brain. I think sometimes, like, when you pressure yourself too much to do things, that can actually be paralyzing, so you're kind of just making it worse. So I guess, like, knowing when you need downtime is important, especially, like, you know, when you have a severe or complex mental illness. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I don't have a really good answer that's just going to fix everything for you, because it's just not how it works, unfortunately. A lot of us are in a really difficult place, and, you know, like I said, my main task in life is just to stay alive. And the way I see it is, in that case, the world, like, the world needs to, that's all the world can expect of me, especially in Australia. We don't have voluntary euthanasia for mental illness, for severe mental illness. We're too squeamish about that. We only recently got it for terminal illness, terminal physical illnesses within 6 to 12 months, depending on what it is. And so if society is not going to give me a way out of my suffering, then they can't expect me to do anything. The biggest thing that I am doing, that society seems to demand of me, is to stay alive. So I have no guilt about whatever resources I'm taking up. I have no guilt about, you know, whatever I need, asking for that, because I don't want to be here. So yeah, if I'm still here, though, yeah, be kind to yourself, and don't feel guilt if you need things and are able to get them, or ask for them, or whatever. That's how I've come to see things. It makes me feel a little bit better about sticking around, but I'm still not exactly thrilled. Of course, now I've signed up to potentially 15 years of little one. So that's another way to convince myself to stay here, a bit different to Avolition. It's just like staying alive. Ah. Bum, 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 ba-da-dum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Well, you can tell by the... Okay, I won't do that. Bye.